We have made it to talking about one of the most incredible men to have ever walked the land of Italy, and his name was Julius Gaius Caesar. He was an incredible leader, and so famous that 2,000 years later, we're still singing his praises. So, what makes him so amazing? Well, tune in to find out. Julius Caesar, born into the patrician family of Julie in 100 BC. As a child, he claimed that he was a descendant of the goddess of Venus, or the goddess Venus, although it's kind of tough to prove that, of course. Not much is known about Caesar's early life. We really start to find out about him at age 16 when his father dies unexpectedly. Caesar then becomes head of the household. Now, his family is not necessarily at the time very big into politics. They're not ruling class. Although they're patrician, they're not a very famous ruling class. They don't have a lot of power. Julius's mom was born into a very wealthy patrician family, and Julius's father was known for his prowess at war and was in the military and was a general, but never took any areas, never was elected to any tribunes, didn't take any positions of power. When Julius's father dies, Caesar now has lots of decisions to make. Julius had a natural leadership skill about him. He could just do it all. He knew how to meet the needs of the people around him. He was a very friendly guy. He was very personable, knew everyone in the room. Whenever he went to a party, he knew everyone. And he always looked out for the needs of other people. So it was no surprise that he was nominated for many important positions, including one of the first when he was 16, the Flammendialis, which was the high priest of the temple of Jupiter. This was a pretty big deal because you had to be elected for your leadership skills, your civic skills, your appreciation for your people and the religion and how to serve people. This was a task that involved looking after other people, not just yourself. While this was going on, though, Caesar's uncle had a very unfortunate political rivalry going on at the time. And because of this, Caesar's life would get flipped upside down. Caesar's uncle died in one of the skirmishes that happened, and the political rival obviously then won. His name was Sulla. And when Sulla took over and became dictator for Rome, he wanted to get rid of everything that was the uncle's family, anything that reminded Sulla of the Caesar, the Julie family needed to go, which meant even though Caesar wasn't, directly related, he was just, a nephew to the uncle. He was kicked out. He lost his position as high priest of Jupiter. He was stripped of all of his inheritance. And although he was married, Julius Caesar was married at the time, he was also expected to divorce from this girl and go into hiding. Caesar refused to divorce her, but he still ended up having to go into hiding. Now, the nice thing with this is, well, he wasn't able to be in the priesthood anymore, so he had to go find something else to do. What's the best thing to go do when you suddenly find yourself kicked out of your home country? Hey, let's join the military. This was possibly the best thing that could have actually happened to Caesar. He joined the army and proved his worth. He was a smart tactician, and actually, smart is sort of downplaying it. He was an incredibly intelligent and clever tactician. and he served Rome with distinction. Even during the siege of Mytilene, he earned the civic crown for his bravery and his intelligence in battle. He was also very popular with his soldiers. He rose to a commanding general very quickly, and he always had his soldiers' best interests when they were going into a fight. He didn't just treat them as pawns. They weren't just why don't just the 3,000 of you just run in there and we'll see what happens. He always wanted to bring back as many men as he took into the battle in the first place, which meant he was very careful with his tactics. He still wanted to win, but he wanted to win with the most men possible. He returned back to Rome in 78 BC when his rival had died, because then it was safe to come back. Now, at this point, he pretty much had no money to his name because he had been stripped of all of his inheritance from his father and all of the dowry from his wife, and he kind of had nothing except for whatever the military had paid him. So he did a little bit of schooling and became a lawyer, and he was soon well known throughout Rome for his gifted oratory. He had a rather high-pitched voice, and he had very dramatic gestures when he talked, which meant that he was someone who was entertaining to watch, and yet he was very intelligent, which meant people learned a lot from him when they listened to him. Caesar gained popularity with the people by looking out for the people and prosecuting the former governors and officials who had been notorious for corruption. So those who had lied and stolen lots of money and stolen money and tried to pretend it was legal by stealing it from other people. Uh, Caesar went after those people and actually helped out the patrician class and the plebeians in quite a few ways. He was not one for lying. He was not one for being unvirtuous. Caesar was always looking for the betterment in people, and he was always looking to better others and help out others who couldn't help themselves. Now, you're probably wondering, Caesar. I think I've heard that before. Caesar. Yeah, there are a lot of questions about how he picked his name because he was from the Julie family, so Julius was the name he took. But Julius Caesar, how did he get Caesar? Caesar really wasn't his last name. Well, there's a few different ideas around this. Some think that it came from the word Caesar, to cut, and that Julius was actually the first baby born through cesarean section, and that's how they named it. Most historians don't think that's true. Others think that he took the name Caesar from Césaire, meaning elephant, which was a Moorish term for the word elephant. It is supposed that Julius killed an elephant, by himself, single-handedly with his weapons during his military service. Now, there's lots of other ways and possibilities that could explain his name, but later on in life, when he printed out money, he put elephants on his coins. I don't know if you can see that elephant there with the word Caesar underneath it. Yeah. The fact that he put elephants on his coins make historians think that he liked the story of him going off and killing an elephant the best. He thought it, he got a chuckle out of that and made him look pretty tough, gave him a good reputation. He liked that story so much that that's the one he put the elephants on the coins for. So will we ever really know where he got Caesar for his last name? Now, cool thing to know. While he was traveling about, sailing is kind of dangerous. At one point, on his way from Rome off to another location, he was captured by pirates. Of course, right? Mrs. Colley will find every single way to include pirates in every single story. We started the year learning about pirates. Now we're going to end the year learning about pirates. Of course. But seriously, Julius Caesar actually was captured by pirates. And the pirates thought, oh, hey, here's a military guy. We're going to ransom him off for 20 talents of silver. Now, Julius laughed at this. He thought, oh my goodness, this is ridiculous. He got up on the ship and he said, look, I don't think you realize who I am. I am worth way more than 20 talents of silver. And the pirates laughed at him. And he said, no, just, you know what? Listen to me. I'll give you a choice here. You can either let me go right now, and I'll forget this whole thing ever happened. Or, fine. You ransom me off, but not for 20 talents. You ransom me off. I think I'm worth 50 talents of silver. Now remember, a talent is like a pound of silver. So 50 pounds of silver, that's like almost $1 million, guys. He says, I'm worth that much. You ransom me off. But then I swear to you that as soon as I get off this ship, I'm going to put together an army, and I'm going to come back, and I'm going to find you, and I'm going to kill every single one of you. So you have a choice. You can let me go, or we can, do plan B. And the pirates laughed at him because, first of all, here's this guy that just shows up on their ship. They're kidnapping him. He shows up, and they're going to keep him alive. First of all, they think he should be pretty impressed with the fact that they're going to keep him alive. He should be thanking the pirates that they're not going to kill him, that they're just going to ransom him off. But how dare he think that he is worth 50 talents of silver instead of 20? And then he goes and threatens them and says, if you don't let me go, I'm going to come back around with an army and hunt you down. Who does he think he is? He's Julius Caesar. That's who. So, oh yeah, you guessed it. Julius Caesar gets ransomed for 50 talents of silver. He gets back to Rome, tells a story to a few of his men, puts together a mini legion, about 3,000 people. They get on a boat, they go sailing. He takes them right back to the island that he was stranded on with the pirates. All the pirates are there. They kill every single one of them and take back the 50 talents of silver. He's Julius Caesar. We don't mess with him. So not only that, but then later on, Julius is quite awesome as a military leader. He leads a group of reserve soldiers to fend off this eastern incursion. And Caesar's leadership was starting to be recognized by Rome. Obviously, he was a pretty impressive guy, and the rest of Rome was starting to stand up and take notice. Caesar was elected to be Quaestor of Hispania, which means he is now the military leader of the entirety of modern-day Spain. He is in charge of the entirety of Spain. Cool, huh? Yeah. So there, he led the entire army there was like 5 legions, and if you think 5 legions, that's like 25,000 men, defeats 2 different hostile bandit tribes, ends up, exploring the territory up there, growing Rome's empire even more, and then instead of just taking care of his military, because it is known that Caesar knew every single one of his soldiers. Every single one of them. He knew them by name. All 25,000, which seems insane. I don't know if I could do that. I don't think I know 25,000 people. Do you know 25,000 people? I think I know like 500. 500. I think I could name you 500 people, and I might be guessing at some of those names. But anyway, Caesar cared for his soldiers. He was such a great commander. He made sure people were taken care of. Oh, this guy's injured. Well, let's give him some rest. Hey, let's give these guys some better armor. Man, you guys have been walking a lot today. Why don't you take an extra rest? We want happy soldiers. Caesar was all about happy army, happy soldiers. Yeah, we got to work. But if the men aren't happy and if they don't think something fair is happening, they will stop working for you. So he wanted to make sure the men were taken care of. But not only that, but he made sure the people were taken care of as well. While in Spain, he reorganized debt laws. He sought out people who were corrupt in the government and got them out of their posts, and he helped because he had lawyer experience and he had knowledge of all these laws. He reorganized debt laws so that people could afford their rent, or who were behind on things had a better chance of catching up. He made sure the plebeians of the world weren't just always going to jail because they couldn't pay their rent. He made sure people were taken care of because people were the backbone of Rome. And if the people fell and the soldiers fell, there'd be no Rome. Rome was built on the backs of people. While in Hispania, Caesar, now aged 30, came across a statue of Alexander the Great and knelt down. It is said that he knelt down in front of the statue and wept. Now, we haven't talked about Alexander the Great, but Alexander the Great was known as, well, he's Alexander the Great for a reason, guys. By the age of 30, he had conquered most of the world. Yeah, he was Alexander the Great. Not Alexander the Okay, Alexander the Great. And he had conquered most of the known world by the age of 30. By the age of 30, he had an empire, twice the size of Rome. And Caesar sat there and realized, I've done nothing. I have done nothing even close to this. And I'm 30. I'm the same age as he was. And I've got nothing to my name. And something changed in him. Something clicked. And he said, no, I need to go and be better. I'm going to go and be better. And I'm going to go and make a difference. And it clicked in his head. It was, nope. He had made his mind up. And when he was done completing his stint as quaestor and making all those fantastic changes for the people in Spain, he returned home to Rome and requested a triumph from the Senate. Now, what is a triumph, you say? I don't know what that is. Well, a triumph is like a giant parade. It is the highest honor any military member could receive, and honestly, one of the highest honors anyone ever could receive in Rome, to have a triumph for yourself. It was basically, he deserved a triumph. He wanted this event to happen because he had gone into Rome, he had made all these changes, he had commanded the armies, he had gained more territory for Rome, he, ended a giant war against some enemies. He had done so many things. He was going to get a triumph. And a triumph was like a giant parade and then a giant party. So it was a huge parade that was supposed to be held in his honor. As part of a triumph, the general, or the triumphator, would ride in with 4 white horses pulling him. He'd wear a laurel wreath on top of his head. He'd ride in this chariot. Huge crowds would come by, much like a parade. And then there would be a huge parade in front of the triumphator and a huge parade behind him. Now let's see what that parade would look like. So, the beginning of the parade would start off with lictors carrying the fasces. Now, I did not get to talk this year to you about fasces, but they are honorable, I could say honorable sticks in a way. But the lictors would have been members of the government, and the triumphator would be the one who got to choose who gets to be in his triumph. So the lictors are important people who are, members of the government, who are um, important people in his life or important people that have stood by him. And they're carrying the symbol of peace and power in Rome, which is the fasces stick. They are marching in with musicians behind them. Behind them are these sacrificial oxen because it's Rome. We always must have a sacrifice of some sort. And then behind the oxen are the senators. Not all of the senators are included in the triumph, just the ones that support the triumphator, who would be supporting Caesar. After the senator comes a long list of all of the treasures, all of the goods, all of the gold and silver, treasures, foods, everything that was captured from any of the wars that they were fighting, all of the money that they were about to donate back to Rome, that all came next. And basically it all came by so all the people could go, ooh, ah, ooh, yoo-hoo. Yes, it was like showing off. Look what we have. Look what we have. After that, more musicians because, well, you need more musicians. And then you'd have after all those, and look at the captured treasures. Look at all this, all down here. All down here. There'd be a lot. After that, you'd have any prisoners, any people who were taken alive from the battles, so prisoners and their families. Then you'd have your favorite generals. So the ones that helped you out the most, they would have a special marching point right in front of you, the triumphator. So your generals, any of the guys who you thought did a spectacular job, who've been supportive of you, your best friends are going to go right in front of you. Then you and your horses and the golden laurel and marching in on your chariot, followed by more lictors, and then you have all the Roman cavalry and infantry. So this is everyone else who fought with you, and that might be thousands of people. You get your fancy polished armor, so not the stuff you're fighting in, but you have a second set just for triumphs, which means if you don't have a second set, then you're spending money to buy a second set, and it better be all polished and shiny because this is a big deal, and you might only wear it once, but it's a big deal. These triumphs, these parades, did not happen every day. They happened very rarely. Then the procession would all lead through the town and end up at the Temple of Jupiter on Capitoline Hill. Here, the triumphator would offer up his laurel, all the sacrifices to the god Jupiter. He would dedicate his victories to the Senate, to the people of Rome, and to the gods. And then there would be a party. There would be banquets and games. There might be gladiatorial events. There might be chariot races at the Circus Maximus. There might be jugglers and fire breathers and big parties, lots of entertainment, music and singing and dancing. The triumphator might even take some of the treasures that he brought over with him and use those to pay for triumphal coins. So coins that he could, put his face on the front and something fancy on the back. And it's kind of like printing money, and print money with his face on it as an honor of, this was my triumph. Here, have some coins. He might even throw coins out to the people as he's passing by as a way of, here, I'm giving back to the people of Rome. He might take some of his money and his earnings and make monuments, temples, might build another Circus Maximus. He might build Roman bathhouses and give any way he could give back to the people of Rome. So a triumph was for this general, but at the same time, it was his job then to give back this any way he could give back to Rome and say, thank you for making me who I am. This is me giving back to you. So upon his return, he doesn't look happy there. Upon his return uh, from Hispania, the Senate said, all right, look, they were getting a little worried because Caesar, although Caesar didn't think he was accomplishing much, the Senate definitely saw that he was accomplishing a lot at a very quick rate of speed. And he was very accomplished. And lots of people liked him. And the military loved him. And the people really liked him. And he could pretty much do whatever he wanted. And that scared the Senate. And that scared them because that might change their way of living. Because they had known him to, he was also a lawyer. So he took out people who weren't doing the right thing. So if you were corrupt, he would point it out, and there would be settlements against you, and you'd lose your job. So the Senate, who wasn't all honest all the time, was a little concerned. So upon his return, Caesar said, "All right, I wish to have a triumph." And the Senate said, "Well, uh, we're going to give you a choice. We will give you a triumph, grand triumph, a fantastic triumph, or we'll let you run for consul, place high up in the government to lead the people. You can have one or the other. You can't have both." And this really angered him because he had done so much for Rome already. Why couldn't he have both? What was the Senate so afraid of? So what did he do? Well, you're going to have to just wait and find out when we get to part 2.